I remember the way she looked at me that night, soft eyes, a tired smile, hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea she barely sipped. There was something distant in her, like she was already somewhere else. At the time, I didn't question it. I thought maybe it was just the weight of a long day. But now, when I replay that moment in my head, I see it for what it really was, the beginning of the end. Love doesn't disappear in a single moment. It erodes slowly, like the sea pulling back from the shore, grain by grain. But betrayal? Betrayal strikes like lightning, sudden, violent, final. This isn't just a story about infidelity, it's about trust cracked open, about silence between words, and about what we choose to see, until the truth refuses to be ignored. Before I tell you what happened, I want you to remember one thing. Sometimes the person lying beside you every night is already gone. My name is Daniel. I'm 38, live in a quiet suburb just outside Portland, and work as a freelance graphic designer. My world has always been simple, structured even. I like routine, black coffee in the morning, a run before lunch, and soft jazz humming through the speakers while I work late into the night. Claire, my wife, was my opposite in many ways. She moved like she belonged on a different wavelength, impulsive, passionate, unpredictable. Where I found comfort and calm, she craved fire. We met 10 years ago at a friend's wedding. She danced barefoot in the rain. I stood under the awning, holding her shoes. I never understood how someone like her chose someone like me. But she did, and for a long time, that was enough. Lately, though, things felt quieter. She was home less. Her phone lit up more often. She laughed at jokes I never heard. There were little things, subtle shifts in behavior that don't seem big on their own, but together they build a wall you can't ignore. She'd come home smelling like a different cologne, not mine. She stopped asking how my day was. Our kisses became quick and forgettable, like checking off a task. I tried to ignore it at first, telling myself not to be paranoid. But the silence between us grew, thick and echoing. The house was the same, but it no longer felt like home. One evening, she was humming to herself in the kitchen, something she hadn't done in months. Her phone buzzed on the counter. I wasn't trying to snoop, but the name that flashed on the screen made my stomach drop. Ethan. I didn't know an Ethan, and I knew all her friends. I remember standing there, frozen, watching the name vanish as quickly as it appeared. Something changed in that moment. I knew I was about to learn something I wasn't ready for. The following days passed in a strange haze. I didn't confront Claire about what I had seen. Instead, I kept quiet, my thoughts racing through scenarios, each more disturbing than the last. But there was something else, something I couldn't quite shake. A nagging feeling that if I just dug a little deeper, if I just pushed a little harder, the truth would come to light. That night, I found myself lying awake beside her. Her breathing was slow and steady, her body a warm weight next to mine. For all our distance in recent months, she still looked beautiful in her sleep. I couldn't help but reach out, brushing a strand of hair away from her face. She didn't stir, and yet the unease in me didn't fade. I had to know. The gnawing question haunted me. Who was Ethan? What did he mean to her? The next morning, I had a decision to make. I could keep living in denial, pretending everything was fine, or I could ask her. But the thought of confronting her terrified me. What if I was wrong? What if my suspicions were just paranoia? I wasn't sure I could handle the answer if it were the truth. So I did what any anxious husband would do. I waited. I watched. Claire had an early meeting that day, so I had a few hours to myself. As I cleaned up the kitchen, my eyes landed on her purse, an expensive leather thing she'd bought last month. I'd never looked through it before, but today I couldn't stop myself. I needed something, anything, to quiet the storm in my mind. Inside, there were the usual things: lip balm, receipts, gum, and then, at the bottom, a folded piece of paper. I pulled it out, and my heart nearly stopped. It was a note, written in Ethan's handwriting. It wasn't long, just a few words, but those words felt like a punch to the gut. Can't wait to see you tonight. 8 p.m., my place. Love, E. Dot. The note slipped from my fingers, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. The air in the room felt thick, like I was suffocating on my own disbelief. I tried to steady myself, but my mind was reeling. My wife, Claire, was having an affair with someone named Ethan. The reality of it hit me harder than I could have ever prepared for. I sat there, paralyzed. The house felt too quiet. The walls closed in on me. How had I missed all the signs? I stood up abruptly, as if trying to shake off the world that had suddenly come crashing down around me. The note was still in my hand. I stared at it, my thoughts a swirling mess of confusion and anger. How could she do this? How could she betray me like this? I wasn't sure what hurt more, the affair itself or the fact that she had kept it hidden for so long. But as I stood there, something else began to gnaw at me. Was I angry because of what she had done? Or was I angry because of what it meant for me? The question tore through me with every heartbeat, each pulse of pain that radiated through my chest. The truth, however ugly, was unavoidable. I couldn't hide from it anymore. I had to confront her, but part of me wasn't sure if I was ready, and another part wondered, was she already gone? The confrontation happened sooner than I expected. Claire had come home that evening just like any other night, smiling as she walked through the door. But I could see the difference in her eyes. She had no idea that I knew, that I was sitting on the edge of a revelation that would shatter everything between us. I couldn't wait any longer. "Claire!" I called out as she hung up her coat, my voice barely above a whisper. The room felt suddenly too small, too suffocating. "We need to talk." Her eyes met mine, and I saw the flicker of unease in them, but she didn't say anything. She knew, somehow, that this wasn't just a casual conversation. I wasn't asking about her day or what she had for lunch. This was something much heavier. She came over, sitting across from me, her posture stiff. I couldn't read her face, but I could feel the weight of her silence. Her lips parted slightly, like she was ready to say something, but no words came out. I placed the note on the table between us. My hand shook as I did so, but I couldn't look away. This was the moment where everything changed. "Is this what you've been hiding?" I asked, my voice tight. "Is this how you've been spending your nights?" Claire glanced at the note, her face draining of color as she registered what it was. Her breath caught in her throat, and for a moment I thought she might deny it. But she didn't. Instead, she sat there, staring at the paper like it was a bomb that had gone off in the middle of the room. I didn't mean for you to find that," she whispered. Her voice was small, fragile, nothing like the confident, assured woman I once knew. "Please, don't hate me." "Hate you?" I repeated, my anger flaring. "I'm not sure I even know who you are anymore, Claire. How long have you been seeing him?" The silence between us stretched for what felt like an eternity. I could hear her breathing, shallow and erratic, and I could feel the tension in the air. She wasn't meeting my eyes, and that said everything. It wasn't guilt she felt, it was fear. Fear of being exposed, of losing everything. "I don't know how it happened," she said finally, her voice breaking. "It started so innocently. Ethan, he's just someone I met at work. We had lunch a few times. But then, I don't know, we started talking more, and one thing led to another, and it just happened." I felt sick. This wasn't the woman I married, the woman I knew would never have cheated on me. Or at least, I had thought so. "But why?" I asked, the question sounding too simple for the depths of my pain. "Why did you do it? Wasn't I enough for you?" Claire's face crumpled, and tears began to spill down her cheeks. She didn't answer right away, and when she finally spoke, her words were full of regret. "I don't know. I honestly don't. I felt so alone, so disconnected from everything. It wasn't you. It was me. I've been feeling empty for so long. And Ethan, he made me feel seen, wanted, in a way I didn't even realize I needed. I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted this." Her apology was the last thing I wanted to hear. I didn't want her remorse. I wanted answers. I wanted the woman I fell in love with back. But there was no going back. This betrayal had already broken the fragile bond we had, and no apology could fix it. "You have no idea what you've done, Claire," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "This isn't just about a mistake. This is about trust. You've shattered everything we had, and I don't know if I can ever forgive you for that." I saw the pain in her eyes, but it was too late for apologies, too late for words. She tried to reach for my hand, but I pulled back. The distance between us, physical and emotional, felt like an ocean. We were no longer the same people who stood at the altar promising forever. That forever had ended the moment she chose someone else. "I'm sorry," she whispered again, "but it wasn't enough. It would never be enough." I stood up, feeling my legs shake beneath me. I needed to get away. I needed space to breathe, to think. "I can't do this right now," I said, my voice strained. "I need to be alone." I turned and walked out of the room, the sound of her crying fading behind me. The tears I couldn't shed yet burned in my throat, but I had no more words, no more anger, just a hollow emptiness. I spent the next few days in a fog, trying to process what had happened. Claire's tears, her apologies, they all felt distant, like echoes from another life. The apartment, once filled with warmth and shared moments, now felt empty, hollow. I didn't speak to her for days after the confrontation. I didn't know what to say. I kept replaying our entire relationship in my mind, looking for the signs I had missed. The late nights at work, the distracted looks, the way she seemed so distant, even when we were together. The truth was, it was all there, right in front of me. I just didn't want to see it. I kept telling myself that I needed to forgive her, that relationships were about understanding, about working through the tough times. But deep down, I wasn't sure if I could ever look at her the same way again. Could I really forgive someone who had broken the trust we had built? Claire tried to talk to me, to explain herself, but the words felt empty. Her explanations didn't change the reality of what had happened. There was no going back to the way things were, no magic words that could heal the wound she had inflicted. I think she knew that, and that was why she stayed distant too. She had done something unforgivable, and no matter how much she apologized, she could never undo it. There was a part of me that wanted to believe things could be fixed, that we could rebuild, but every time I looked at her, I saw the betrayal. I couldn't escape it. I realized that I had been holding on to the idea of who Claire was, the woman I loved, and not the reality of who she had become. And as painful as it was, I had to let go. It wasn't just about the affair, it was about everything that had led to it. The emotional distance, the lack of communication, the silence that had grown between us over the years. The affair was the breaking point, but it wasn't the only problem. We had stopped seeing each other, really seeing each other, long before Ethan came into the picture. One evening, I sat down with Claire. The words were harder to find now, but I knew what I had to say. "Claire, I think it's time we face the truth," I began, my voice quiet but firm. "We've both changed, and I don't think we can come back from this. You hurt me in a way that can't be fixed." She looked at me, her face pale. "Please don't say that," she whispered. "I love you. I don't want to lose you." "I know you love me," I replied, my voice tight. "But love isn't enough when there's no trust. You've taken that from me, and I don't know if I can find it again." She reached for me, her hand trembling, but I pulled away. "I'm sorry, Claire," I said softly, "but I can't do this anymore." And just like that, the last of what we had was gone. We spent the next few weeks in silence, the air thick with regret and unspoken words. Eventually, we decided it was best to part ways. The divorce wasn't easy, but it was the only option left. Neither of us could go back to the people we had been before. For a long time after, I lived in a daze. I didn't know who I was anymore, without her, without the life we had built. I tried to focus on my work, on myself, but the empty spaces she had left behind were impossible to ignore. In the end, though, I came to understand something that had been unclear to me before. Healing doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow, painful process. It takes time to rebuild your sense of self after something like this. But it's possible, and eventually I would learn to trust again, though not in the way I had before. Claire and I never spoke again after the divorce. The life we had shared faded into the past, a chapter I would carry with me, but one that no longer defined me. Sometimes, in quiet moments, I think back to those days, to the woman I thought I knew, and wonder how things might have turned out if we had talked more, if we had communicated better. But I know that's a question without an answer. I still don't know if I'll ever find love again, or if I'll trust someone the way I once trusted Claire. But I know that life goes on, and that I will too. As I sit here, thinking back on everything, I realize that sometimes the hardest thing to do is let go. Letting go of the people we love, the dreams we've built, the future we imagined. But sometimes it's the only way to find peace. And in the end, that's what I need most. Peace.